Planning and Zoning Commission, Thursday, August 17th, 2017, to order, please. I'd like to start this evening's meeting with just a brief statement about the passing of our city attorney, Bob Ginsberg, who was a friend to the entire city, more than a competent attorney. Most of us in this life, when we leave as a legacy nothing but the memories of those who knew us, worked with us. Bob left a much bigger legacy than that. He left a vast library of municipal governance. He left knowledge to anybody who asked a question, and he left friendship with all of us. Now, if we could just take a moment of silence. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roth?
Here.
Mr. Simmons is excused. Ms. Cottenberg?
Present.
Mr. Carter?
Present.
Mr. Reyes?
Here.
Mr. McManus? Here. Mr. Kieselbosch is excused. Mr. Hugan? Here. Mr. Alvarez?
Here.
Thank you.
And Mr. Simmons is also excused from tonight's meeting. Mr. Hugan will be voting tonight. Do we have any announcements, other announcements or agenda modifications? Okay. You've all had the opportunity to read the meeting minutes from July 6th, 2017. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No.
Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes from the July 6, 2017 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is passed. Thank you. Okay, we will begin with our first quasi-judicial hearing this evening. Has anybody on the commission had any ex parte communication with anybody regarding the Paradola Brewery and Mr. Thomas Haynes?
Chairwoman Cottenberg, if we could have the city attorney read the item into the record.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
If we can have the city attorney read the agenda item into the record.
Certainly.
The matter for this hearing is the request for a change of use, retail to brewery bar for Paradola Brewery. Applicants are Peter Anderson, Tom Haynes. Location is 712 Cleveland Street.
Okay. And now, has anybody had any ex parte communication? Hearing none, will our attorney please swear in anyone who will be giving testimony?
If you will be giving any sort of testimony for this matter, whether you're the applicant, city staff, or any other member of the public, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to give or present during this public hearing will be truthful and accurate, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Will the applicant or the applicant's agent please begin your presentation?
Good evening. My name is Todd Smith. I'm the engineer of record representing the owners tonight. What's before the board is a change of use of an existing retail structure on Cleveland, converting it over to a brewery tavern. So it's going from a retail use to an assembly use. It's approximately a 2,800 square foot building. And I'm available to answer any direct questions you may have about the conversion. Part of the change of use, the structure itself will be, as with any change of use, will be brought up to the current 5th edition Florida Building Code, and we've worked with staff to retrofit the site with as much of the parking, landscaping improvements to meet code. I'm available if there's any questions.
Okay.
And the owner is also present if there's any direct questions for them.
Okay. I think their next order is to have some communication from our staff, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a request for change of use. The current building, or the building, did have a retail use. We all know it as the old Ace Hardware store. It also was the city's post office back in the 50s and 60s, and as such, it's an older site that we do not have a lot of file surveys, site plans for this site. So even though this application is not necessarily adding any additional impervious area or building square footage, we felt at this time it was going from a certain use to a more intensity that at this time we would require a formal site plan that does indicate all of the parking and where some of the improvements to the property for this change of use would be, and memorialize it on a site plan. With regards to parking, this was one of 2 properties in the riverfront that when the city did the presidential streets, we actually, by us putting our parking in front of the building, we created a scenario where their parking, which backed down to the street, became inoperable and unusable. So this site did have, I believe it was a certain amount of credits that we gave to them. It was, 6 credits for the parking spaces that we removed. They are, through this process, going to restripe and add the additional parking that they need to the rear of the building. There are some compact spaces. We felt also, as you go down in the riverfront in the weekends with a lot of motorcycle up in the area, we allowed them to have some, or it was a way to get compliance with the parking. The same scenario that we did for Earl's, where 2 motorcycle parkings would give them a credit for 1 regular space, which they have added back there. They are going to add some landscaping in the front. It does not totally meet the riverfront code, but this is the best we felt that would help this property come into compliance. And as such, since we didn't have any formal type of landscaping plan from before, we didn't feel that we needed to go through any type of waiver process for the landscaping that wasn't going to go in. I know that the applicants are very enthusiastic about this use. We think it's going to be a good place too, also for this brewery. And with what they're proposing, bringing it closer to compliance, and they are meeting the compliance for parking, staff recommends approval, and at this time we have no conditions.
Thank you. It's time now for questions from the commission. Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
No, I don't.
No questions of the applicant?
I have one.
Thank you. I would be so disappointed if you didn't.
Sorry, I don't want to disappoint you then. The question I have is the proposed patio that looks like, according to drawings on the front,
Yes.
is that going to have a covering over it?
No, it's just a deck on grade with a decorative handrail that'll be around the northern perimeter of it. Strictly open. So it's not
Patio,
enclosed.
any chairs, tables?
Well, yeah, there'll be
Awning.
chairs. There'll be some chairs and tables in it, but there's no walls to it. There's no roof covering. It's just an open air wood deck on grade.
Staff did review that as table seating, and it is included in the parking calculations. We used the restaurant seating calculations to see how much parking we needed for that. This may be a phase 2, the outside patio. They do want to get the the equipment in the brewery up and going. You may not see the proposed patio until next year or so. They'd come in with a separate permit for that. So even though it's not listed on the site plan as Phase 2, it certainly may turn out to be that, where it's not right when the brewery opens up. I did want to, I said there was no conditions, and we don't want to make it as a condition, but it was brought to our attention from the building department. There's the proposed grease trap location does appear to be straddling the property line. The owner of this property does own the property next to it. We may need to get, as we go through that permit, maybe some sort of easement or affidavit of agreement that it can encroach a small bit into that property, and we'll address that through that grease trap permit.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, I'd just like to make a general statement. I think this would be a good use for this property that's been sort of a blight, if you will, for many years. It's had the various hardware stores, things like that in there. I've also followed the history and the path that the owners have taken in their present location, which is their dream came true when they started that, so that's remarkable. And I have also been in there several times, and it does get crowded at times. So I think this would be a good fit for them, and with the additional things that they're going to be doing, we'll be upgrading this particular property. So I just wanted to make that general statement, and thank you for investing back into the community.
Keep the mural on the front, too.
So advised.
I would, I have a couple questions. What type of foods are you going to be serving out of there? Is the kitchen in there? Is there going to be a kitchen, or is it just?
I think
is
it's
it
similar
to your location now? What you're going to be serving in here as?
That's probably a question more suited for the owner. It's not like it's a restaurant. I think it's more tavern food that I'll kind of divert to Tom, do you?
Yes, it's going to be more like comfort food, like you have in a basket. It's not a
Is it
full-fledged
a
restaurant.
full-service kitchen in there that's
No,
like gas ranges and stuff like that?
no fryers, no hood.
As long as as sales is over 50% is going to be more of the beer sales, it's considered a bar use. If the
I was
sales for the
hoping the
food was over
city-
50%, it would be a restaurant use, but the
So
proposal
it's
is mostly
just-
the bar.
It's bar use right now?
Yes, and the food service would be accessory to the bar use.
The parking looks really tight. I'm sure the city spent a lot of time trying to fit this in here to meet compliance, but are we getting some parking in lieu of permits to be able to meet?
No, this was one of the properties that actually got parking credits for the parking in front of it, the city parking.
Okay,
If the city hadn't made their parking inoperable, yes, they would have probably had to pay for some parking in lieu. But there were two sites when we did the presidential streets where we actually eliminated the site's parking. Now, in the back was mostly used it was never formalized as a parking lot. Again, we didn't have a site plan. So this way, we are getting at least some parking. We worked with them on the compact and the motorcycle parking. So we feel that this is to get the business up and going. Certainly, if they want to expand or it does get bigger, they have that option of buying some parking in lieu. Of course, you've got the presidential street parking all up and down the street, too, so we did not foresee a parking issue with this.
I'm curious if you had to look at a fire truck route to be able to access the property here on a property like this.
The way the fire codes work, as long as the structure is within 150 feet of the road, fire trucks not required to
So
have
the
access.
fire truck would be out on Cleveland is what would be the case in this, and they would be able to service you.
Yes.
The site plan was sent to the fire department. They did review it. They did have a parking space that needed to be eliminated, but they did send us approval of this. They have looked at the design.
So, I'm not sure of the question about the patio. You're not planning on having tables and chairs out there also?
We are.
You are?
There will be tables and chairs out on the patio.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. It does say tables and chairs right like that. Okay, I have no further questions right now.
And just for the record, it was my mistake. I forgot to ask Mr. Haynes to give us his name for the record.
No problem. Thomas Haynes, and I'm the owner of 712 Cleveland Street here in Sebastian.
Thank you.
And Mr. Anderson also had provided some nodding along, and Mr. Haynes, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Bosworth have all been sworn in.
Okay. If there are no further questions here, we will ask the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in opposition to this proposal?
Ben Hocker, City of Sebastian. This is not opposition to or approval of. I've got a few questions. The survey shows the bathrooms, 2 existing, 2 being added. I don't see any definition of handicap on them. They may comply, they may not. I'm not up on that. I'm just questioning it. I look at the layout of the building and I see a bar with 10 stools and then a big open area. How have these people come to their occupancy requirement of people? I didn't find that anywhere on the, maybe I overlooked it. So again, the number of patrons would have a big effect on the parking spaces. I counted the parking spaces, I got 18 with the ones out in the front, and I guess that included the 6 that we're allowing them, that we took away, which we gave them back. And you've buried the motorcycles in the extreme far corner in back of the building. You know nobody's gonna put a motorcycle back there. Just a comment on that. Next, you're brewing beverages. You're packaging it and you're selling it. Is that not commercial zoning required for manufacturing of a product, be it beer, be it a car, be it whatever? I ask that question. Where does it fit within the zoning ordinances? And again, every time somebody comes up with a new special plan, why do we have an existing land development code? It took years to formulate it. There was a reason for keeping this property on that street in some form of retail. Now we're going to change it. We do it constantly. Somebody ought to think about that. But the big one is this commercial? I still don't know how the city came up with their parking allocation when you have no idea how many patrons, especially out in the front of a building where you can have 4 tables, which would be 16 people, and then another 16 people standing around. So I don't really understand how it came up. Maybe the fire marshal has an answer. I don't know. But again, we're changing zoning again. We've had the land use. It's constantly happening. Thank you.
Let me think. Would you like to address how this fits in?
Sure, I can answer
All right,
most of those
thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
The floor plan, as you can see there, yes, it shows 10 stools, but based on the building code, it's not based on how many stools, it's 18 inches, so the length of that bar is divided by 18 inches, they come up with the capacity. Also, there is an area that says table and chairs area. The city doesn't base our parking on how many seats, it's more on a capacity, and that area was also spelled out on that sheet S1 based on a formula within the building code. And so over on the side there, it does state the capacity that they have come up with this. for this, and this is based on the Florida Building Code on Mr. Smith, Todd Smith and his staff that came up with that. In the commercial zoning, there are different permitted uses and conditional uses, so once a use is set there, as long as it's a permitted use, you're allowed to change that. That's why we're going through this process. And it also was, this is an existing brewery that's moving to an additional location. He is correct in that there is some sort of manufacturing the brewery in the back. It was actually something staff wanted to talk to the commission under matters. We do have another brewery that is proposing to come in. And so at this point, we've had looked at this as more storage. They're not doing a lot of bottling and canning at this time. They hope to get to that, but it's mostly just that beer that you go to the bar and it's a microbrewery. And that, I think, has a key. It's a microbrewery. We're not considering this at any type of beer manufacturer or beer factory at this point. It is a new use within the zoning world with these microbreweries that are coming up, and we may want to put some codes in, but right now we had just looked at it as storage in the bar in the front.
If I may ask some questions. I'm just curious about this grease trap. What is the purpose of a grease trap when you don't have a kitchen? Does the brewery have waste that goes in these grease traps?
No, it was required by the health department for the minimal kitchen, but there will be fryers in there, so it's fry food,
yeah, okay.
things like that, and they'll have the hoods over the fryers. So it was a requirement based on the health department review.
And I apologize. There was an agreement with the neighbor on that, the adjacent property owner, to have it on the side?
The adjacent property owner is Mr. Haynes. And so at this time, there is this encroachment, but it is with the same owner. But we'll have to look into that on how we want to kind of settle that. So if there is a new ownership on either of the properties that we've got, if the grease trap is going to be encroaching onto the...
It wouldn't require to join the properties?
No, we could possibly do a small easement.
Okay.
An equipment easement or agreement.
If there are no others from here?
I'm sorry.
That's okay, I'm reserving some. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak in favor of this, since I reversed the order before?
Good evening, I'm Mike Green, and first of all, I appreciate you all serving.
Excuse me, could you say your name and your address, please?
I'm Michael Green, and I own the property that's adjacent I'm on the west side. I'm at the corner of Cleveland and US 1, currently operate an office building there. Okay. And I don't know the two individuals that plan to open the brewery and haven't been to their establishment, but I'm encouraged that there are local individuals that want to serve our community. I think pedestrian traffic up and down the river is advantageous, and as one that could potentially be impacted, being a property owner adjacent, I've carefully considered this, and I think it would be an excellent use of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
This is Cynthia Hall. Can I just ask for a bit of clarification that might help issues a bit? There is a brew pub exception for operation of small, in Florida statutes, Florida Statute 561.221 for licensing of manufacturers of small quantities of a fermented beverage. Can I ask the applicant whether that is the exception they are operating under? Under 10,000 kegs per year?
Hello, I'm Pete Anderson, 117 Joy Haven, Sebastian, Florida. Lynn Anderson and myself own Paradolli Brewing Company. And you are correct, a brew pub is a legal definition according to the state of Florida Alcohol Tobacco Bureau. It allows us to serve food as well as manufacture the beer on premises. But they have been changing the rules with beer lately. Brew pub used to be the only way to have a small kitchen with your tasting room. That's how we initially opened. Prior to 2015, if If you had a tasting room, you could not have a kitchen in the state of Florida, which is why a lot of breweries had food trucks, or they would have the catered food come in. So that law has been changed. We are allowed now to have a kitchen and a tasting room. And we are, our production will be under 1,000 barrels a year, which is really small. To give you an idea, Cigar City, before they merged with the bigger brewery, they were producing about 40,000 barrels a year. So we're keeping it local and keeping it small.
Great.
Can I answer any other questions?
Sure, is that law per site or per license?
It's for licensing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
If, I believe the applicant has responded to all of the questions. Would you like to summarize, please?
Staff recommends approval of this change of use from retail to brewery without any conditions needed.
Thank you. Does anybody on the commission have anything that they'd like to add, question, comments? Well, I'll just make the comment. I am very, very happy to see a local small business growing in our community. It's a healthy sign for the future. And you're right, that building has been a little bit of an eyesore for quite a while. And I think it's a plus that we have something going in there that has a good chance of being successful. And also, just as a comment too, this is an old city by Florida standards, not by the standards of where I come from, but by Florida standards, this is an old city. Many of the buildings and lots that were originally built no longer fit the lifestyle of today. Therefore, we need to be a little bit flexible about what we can do with the older buildings and the older lots in order to make them still be pleasant, be productive to our community, not become objects of blight where nothing can be done. So thank you for making an application, even though it isn't an automatic fit. Thank you. Okay. I will call for a motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the change of use site plan for 712 Cleveland Street as prepared and submitted by plan staff.
I'll second that.
Okay. We will call for a vote, please.
Mr. Hugen,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes?
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
your motion passes.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, the next item is another quasi-judicial public hearing, site plan modification. And if we could have our attorney read the,
This is for the New York Barber Shop, additional parking. The requested action is modification of the site plan to formally add 10 parking spaces on the .15 acre parcel, Lot 2, located to the east and adjacent of the existing barber shop, along with requisite landscaping and stormwater management system.
okay. Has anybody on the commission had any ex parte communication with?
No.
No? Okay. Do we have a presentation from the owner or his agent, please?
Todd Smith, and also the engineer for this project.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Do you acknowledge that you're still under oath from the previous hearing?
I do. The New York Barber Shop, I'm here representing the owners, they couldn't come tonight, but they purchased this 60-foot wide lot adjacent to their existing business, which is also flourishing and expanding, and they realized the need for additional parking. So there's no structures proposed with this proposal, strictly 8 parking spaces, and interconnect the parking lot over to the parking lot at the Italian-American Club, and put in the drainage facility and landscaping improvements that are required by the code. And this particular lot will be formally joined with the parcel that the barbershop structure's on through a unity title, and it'll become one lot.
Any questions from the commission?
I have a comment. I was noticing under page 2, item 7A, that the property was cleared, millings placed on a lot 2 without formal permits. As I recall, this is the same business a year or 2 back that had to have their building repainted again because they arbitrarily decided they wanted to paint their building. I mean, I have no problem with people wanting to better their business and add things, but people need to follow the rules as far as getting permits and things like that before they start working on things. So I just want to make that comment because I don't know if other commissioners remember that from several years ago, that they came before this commission when they had some painting issues, and they were cited for that. Just a comment.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I will ask a couple questions. The existing milling area, is it gonna get, is asphalted? I'm trying to look at a section of view here on your
The
plan.
existing milling area is basically going to be taken up, and the parking that's shown up front, because the millings are down basically on the lot from the front property line back towards the back of the building. All those millings are going to be pulled up, and the pavement out front for the new spaces will be either asphalt or concrete. The owners have the option built into the plans. And then the millings that are on the east side of the building right now will be restored back to lawn, and then we're putting in a small drainage swale at the south end of the parcel.
I'm looking at the site headed towards the back along the side of the building there, which is used a lot for parking there. There's no intention at all to use that parking I see on the site plan here, but I'm just not sure it's gonna happen. I'm curious if we can add some landscaping hedging there. Is this already been looked at by the city, I would assume, for the landscape design on it? Do they meet the criteria on there?
Yeah, this is,
Ms. Bosworth, will you acknowledge that you remain under oath and will continue to, from the previous hearing, will continue to be under oath for the remainder of this meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
This was a site that went before, it was, again, it has a history on the different uses, and so the site plan is before a lot of the current codes that we have for the overlay district. It did have a specific landscape plan when it was built. It used to be the old Pinder Shell Shop for a long time, and it may have some trees missing along Biscayne Drive. But they have, when they switched to the New York Barber Shop, we required the overlay landscaping on that first lot 1, and now with the addition of the parking lot, we have required full compliance with the landscaping for the lot 2 for the new parking area. So you'll see that there is parking along 512, and there is parking on the side in the rear buffer. They're adding some trees, understory trees, and hedging. You can see that on sheet 3. What we also required, and I'm just going to give a quick the staff scenario. Because those lots are small, they're 40 feet wide, 60 feet wide, Indian River County came back and said not every lot can have a driveway. And so incorporated in our code, there is a master curb cut plan. This lot 2 for this new parking, and as you can see, lot 1 itself, the Barber Street, does not have a driveway off of 512. It comes in off of Biscayne. And it does require all of the properties to be interconnected with an pedestrian access easement. As our sites come in along 512, you'll see that we do have those parking areas, have the connecting apron to the next lot so that when they do come in and get connected, it does flow. And the Italian American Club was required to do that on their parking lot, and now that this lot is being built, that is one of the requirements, that they have to connect to the Italian American Club. And the idea is only the lots, every 4 or 5 lots gets the driveway, but all of the parking areas will be interconnected. So that, as you can see, that is one of our conditions. We have drafted the easement that's required. That would be one of their conditions, that the owners do sign that and record that. We would like these properties unified so they are one lot. And also, based on again, this was an old site on lot 1. The stormwater is actually in part of the right-of-way. So with this, Todd did update to what they needed with St. John's requirement, but it is still under 2 acres of impervious area. So he'll be able to give St. John's, submit a certification, exemption certification, and that is also one of our conditions, that we would just get a copy of that when that's filed with St. John's.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. I'm going to ask members of the public, if you wish to address this item, to please rise and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you are about to give or present during this public hearing will be truthful and accurate, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name when you come to the podium. Thank you.
Anyone in favor? Are you in favor?
Just a few questions. Donna Urban. I'm the president of the Italian American Club, which is next door.
Okay.
So do I wait, or is now the time? We just had some questions as far as our parking lot is way higher than theirs. So is that going to be covered with connecting the lots? Like, we're connected, I know what you're talking about, we are connected to the next lot. Their lot is probably at least that far down from ours.
There is almost a 2-foot elevation difference. Yes.
And that's all gonna be evened, or just where they're gonna drive?
Their parking area will go up into yours. I did pull the Italian American site plan to verify that their stormwater does head towards the middle of their lot. They have some catch basins. So in theory, there isn't any additional drainage from the Italian American Club that will drain off onto the parking, or vice versa. So you won't get any of their drainage. But yes, from the parking area up to yours, there will be a slight bump similar to what you have going down to your overflow parking.
Okay. I mean, that was one of ours. We were concerned with the, and also the fact that, I wish they were here, but is there anything that we will have to do if they start using our parking lot? Because we do get quite busy. So I guess, is that something with them?
The easement, the actual verbiage in the easement allows for pedestrian traffic through your property, does not allow them to use your parking. So your parking spaces are still private. Okay. It's a 24-foot swath, which is your drive aisle, and that's what is allowed based on the verbiage and the other your recorded easement, and the one that will have to be recorded for this. It is strictly a 24-foot path for just the drive aisle. It's
very possible this will improve your situation, your parking situation.
Right.
And vice versa, your patrons would be able to use the New York Barbershop to get to Biscayne instead of having to go out to 512, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none. Any summary? I think you've already given us our summary.
Staff recommends approval with the 3 conditions noted in the staff report.
Okay. Any comments or deliberation, questions from the commission? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the site plan modification for the New York Barber Shop at 867 Sebastian Boulevard for additional parking, C512 zoning district, with the recommendations, to include the recommendations that staff made.
Second, please.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Excuse me, before we have a vote, Dory, did I hear you say there were 2 conditions or 3?
3.
3, okay, fine. That's it. Answers it.
And to clarify that the motion is, can you clarify that the motion is for the 3 recommendations on page 6 of the packet at the bottom? Correct? Okay.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes?
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
Mr. Hugan?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Yes.
Your motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 3.
This is for Project Sebastian Medical Suites Commercial Subdivision. It's a preliminary plat approval. The project location is 801 Wellness Way and 13035 US Highway number 1.
Okay. Has anyone on the commission had any ex parte communication with the developer or the owner of the property? Hearing none, then we will swear in the applicant and anyone who wishes to make any testimony.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to give or present during this public hearing will be truthful and accurate, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, will the applicant please make their presentation?
Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commissioners. My name is Joseph Schulke. I reside in Sebastian, Florida, and my offices at Schulke Bedonsada are in Vero Beach, Florida. Mr. Bill Stewart, the attorney for the developers, here as well. If there's any legal questions that I may not be able to answer. What we're proposing simply is to subdivide the existing medical suites property, which is between the church, St. Sebastian Church, and Walmart. There's an existing medical building, existing bank, large parking lot, and stormwater tract, and a dry retention area on the west side. Just simply subdivide that into 3 lots. There's some technicalities that we requested some variances from, which planning, zoning, or rather city council are permitted by code to grant. So these specific variances would allow us to go through the subdivision procedure. Staff has outlined them and also has included as an exhibit my initial letter request to staff, which kind of outlined what we were requesting and the reasons for it. To summarize, we're requesting a exemption from the right-of-way or variance from the right-of-way frontage requirement for the lots. Exception to some environmental considerations, an exception to 2 means of ingress and egress, exception to some street characteristics, and exceptions to dead-end streets. In all cases, we're not simply just saying we don't want to do that, but we're providing an alternative of some sort. The right-of-way frontage requirement, the code indicates that they'd like to see lots have frontage on a road right-of-way in all cases. In this particular site, It's got a small frontage on US 1, and it's very deep, and there's no other roads, or there's not any opportunities for any other roads. The access driveway that goes through the center of the property, and the bank's on the right, medical suites are on the left, and a future development area in the back is accessed by a driveway within an existing 42-foot wide easement. It's not practical to make it 50-foot wide because of the Sebastian Medical Suites building is so close to the driveway there. And one probably argue in a commercial setting, in a commercial project, it's probably not necessary. The code, if you really look at the overview of the whole Sebastian Land Development Code, it's really set up for subdivisions of residential developments, residential subdivisions. I talked to the previous planner about this in the past, and she had agreed that when you're talking about commercial properties, and I'll give you an example, like the mall, the Indian River Mall, or in some other areas, almost most of your jurisdictions allow you to plat those properties, even though it's surrounded by parking lots and you don't have the right-of-way and stuff like that. It's a different animal. It's a different entity than a residential subdivision. So these type of right-of-way are really not typically necessary for commercial development. The environmental considerations, you said the project's already mostly developed. There is an out parcel in the back, which would be one of the lots. And when we developed this property back, I think it was in 2008, we had to have a full environmental review. We had to have a survey, and the back area wasn't developed at that time. There was some scrub jays on that property. They did not develop it, and simply by platting, we're not creating any more of a threat to the bird, to the scrub jay, because if we were to propose anything on that back lot at that time, the city's code requires that we do a full environmental review and go through the whole permitting procedure anyway. So what this simply does is allow us to create the 3 lots and allow the medical site suites that's there now to be sold as a fee simple property instead of a condominium, which it is now. The 2 means of egress, the code actually specifically has a specific written variance that says that council can approve an alternate if you provide a secondary means by easement for emergency vehicles. We're proposing that through St. Sebastian Church. The developer's been working with St. Sebastian. They're in agreement. I think Mr. Stewart, gave something to Dory, and today the easement this afternoon. So that's taken care of. The last thing is dead-end streets. The code says, hey, you need a cul-de-sac at the end of a street. And again, this is one of those things where really it's set up for residential development. We have the cul-de-sacs and the lots. But in this particular case, remember, our driveway is terminating in a parking lot. So you have all the room in the world to go around any which way you want. The reason you put a cul-de-sac at the end of a road is so you have your fire trucks, your larger trucks, delivery trucks can turn around. Well, in this case, you're going right into a parking lot that has plenty of driving aisles, and we're providing access easements over the driving aisles, so any vehicle has multiple opportunities to be able to turn around easily and readily. So that's what we're asking for as far as the variances to the code. I think otherwise there's everything's been constructed. There's minimal improvements we have to do. We're going to restripe a couple parking spaces. I think 18 of them we're going to restripe. We're going to add a little bit of asphalt, about 10 foot long by 40 foot, to stub out to that new lot 3 to make sure they have asphalt right through the property line, and add a couple landscape islands in the back. I mean, really minimal improvements in the back, and that would be kind of like the site plan of the plat portion. And I think that's it, really. And I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from our commissioners, please. Anybody?
Chairman, if I can give a staff kind of a synopsis too, that may answer some questions also before. I did want to clarify just some verbiage that Mr. Schulke has been using. The subdivision section of our land development code provides for adjustments, similar to what you're allowed to use in the overlay district for waivers. It's not a formal variance that has to go before City Council. It does allow for some adjustments at this stage instead of a separate application and a separate process. So what they're requesting are 5 adjustments from the codes, which I did, which is your Exhibit A in your packet. And you can clearly see that it says after consideration and recommendation to Planning and Zoning Commission. So when you make your motion, we request that you add that you have considered the requested adjustments and also include that as part of your recommendation to City Council. This is coming about is that this at one time was a large piece of property. It was through a division of lot chunked off for the PNC Bank property. And one of the conditions of that simple two-lot split was that any further division required this platting process. And Mr. Schulke is right, our code isn't necessarily set up for commercial type of subdivisions, but this one's very similar to one you did just a few months ago, the Jackson Street Corners. It'll be a 3-lot commercial subdivision. The adjustments, staff feels are warranted. It does have an access drive that will provide access to all 3 of the lots. They are working on with the St. Sebastian Catholic Church to the north and an emergency access, which would create the second required access that's required by the code. Instead of curb and gutter and the length of some of the streets, they are proposing a kind of modification to the design of the existing sites. That will be considered the subdivision construction. So once the plat is approved by City Council, they would be able to go in then and add those compact spaces and some additional landscaping that they're showing on that second sheet, the sheet C200. Similar to the Jackson Street then, when that 3rd lot is conveyed and comes in with a site plan, that is when we will require the formal environmental study analysis, traffic analysis, how many additional trips from that use. At this point, we don't know what use is going to be on that 3rd lot, so it would be hard for us to really come up with any conditions on how we needed any traffic modifications or revisions to the site. That will be required when the site plan is submitted. Just want to make sure. So yes, with regards to the site plan, the preliminary plat, staff is recommending approval of the recommended adjustments as noted on page 7, and also that the easement agreement with the St. Sebastian Church for the additional ingress and egress is executed and recorded before the final plat for the subdivision is recorded.
Thank you. And now, questions from the commissioners.
Has that easement between subject property and St. Sebastian Church, has that been drafted yet?
Yes, it was delivered to Dory today, correct?
The initial draft was sent to staff. We had a few comments. One of the main ones, though, is because this is a condition of the Land Development Code, we required that if there was any changes or modifications to that easement or agreement between the church and the medical suites, that the city was also involved with that. But we have that initial draft, and Mr. Stewart has made the changes, and they are working on getting it executed between the 2 properties. So I don't think that's going to be an issue to have that done before the final plat.
Are there any traffic conditions, i.e., I know this is private property, but will there need to be stop signs placed there anywhere in that area?
I believe there is some already. Don't forget, these sites do interconnect already. But this is because
yes.
this, and that was just more between the 2 site plans. The site plans when the medical suite buildings was built. This will be more of this is a subdivision requirement for the second means of egress. But there is already a connection, and stop signs and stop bars are already in place.
I don't think that's going to be a big issue, but I'm asking because I was through there, and I do recall seeing one stop sign and one control, but not on the other. So. But that'll be looked into when the easement is completed, I'm sure. And Mr. Schelke, did you say that the wooded area in the back did in 2008 have scrub jays?
Yes.
Okay. Will there be anything need to be done to update that at this point?
Not at this point. The rationale being we're not actually doing anything. We're not making any improvements that would actually impact the bird if the bird's still there, or birds. But if and when a proposal is submitted to the city for Lot 1, at that time we would address the scrub jay and any other environmental considerations.
I wouldn't want to see you spend a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, I have mostly a reconfirming question. The right-of-way would also include Lot 3. Lot 3 is the rear lot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then the right-of-way is going to be sufficient so as to allow Lot 3 to be developed properly.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I see Lot 3 as the PNC Bank. Lot 1 is in the back.
Lot 1, Lot,
Yeah, lot 1, right.
I had a question in reference, probably way early to ask this, but you have no plans on removing that existing drainage swale in the back there?
The drainage swale that's in the back was actually a temporary retention area. It's part of a document that was prepared and recorded. And it's temporary for that drainage, for that parking area. And the agreement and drainage easement indicates that when lot 1 is developed, they can relocate that retention area as long as they accommodate the drainage for everybody.
To where? You're going to be adding more drainage, or you're going to be flowing more water on this site.
Well, what they'd have to do
Is
is,
this required because the other existing pond didn't retain enough? Was the site flooding? I'd hate to see this, if anything, expanded, not removed.
well, it would not only be relocated, but it would be expanded, granted, because the existing retention area is enough for the impervious area that's there now. When they develop, they'll have to relocate it, but they'll also have to expand it for their own area. And that has to go through permitting through the St. John's and the city as well. But early on in 2008, there's actually a conceptual plan with a building in the back, and it had expanded retention area and a lake in the back by the railroad tracks. There'll be some configuration like that, but it'll not only be relocated, but expanded. Has to be.
I see a lot of times on these plans, the adjoiners, the adjacent lots showing where there's their wells or septic tanks on the adjacent lots. Is there any? I don't.
No, Walmart and the St. Sebastian are both connected to any River County sewer. And there's actually a lift station on our southwest corner, right in Walmart's property, but just south of our southwest corner. And that's where the sewage goes in that area. And St. Sebastian Church has a lift station as well, just to the north of our northwest corner. And there's a force main along the railroad tracks where all the sewage is pumped into.
Mr. Reyes, when the site plan comes in for Lot 1, you'll have more of that information too that we usually see. Since the PNC Bank and the suites were an existing site, and that has already been reviewed through those site plans, but you'll get that adjacent information through that Lot 1 site plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Alvarez, any questions?
Are you guys planning on doing something right now or in the immediate future?
No, there's no immediate plans for Lot 1. The existing Sebastian Medical Suites is a condominium right now, and they would like to dissolve the condo and create fee simple ownership of that medical suites to the south. And so as part of that, so we're subdividing so that becomes a lot now instead of a condominium. And the bank is already its own lot, but one of the conditions was we actually had to include the bank in any re-subdivision of the property later on, condition back in 2008. So consequently, we're creating a lot over the bank, we're creating a lot over the medical suites existing, which leaves the balance of the property in the back, so that becomes the other lot.
Right, I saw that. Okay, so in the immediate future, right now, you have anything?
No, sir.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. I have just a couple of questions. I am presuming, but I would like your assurance, that when the lots are sold, that the right-of-way will be deeded in perpetuity to those?
Yes, actually, what you're looking at approval for is a preliminary plat. But once this is approved, we submit a final plat, which will go, I think it goes directly to City Council, the final plat, right?
Correct.
It doesn't go to you. But that final plat will be the instrument that records in perpetuity.
Okay, I just worry about details, that's.
Yeah.
And then if you could, please, tell me what is a compact car? Like, just give me a couple of brand names, because I don't think most people in public understand that.
I would say generally I don't know, a compact car would be
Yeah.
a Prius, it might be a Honda Civic, it might be, a Mazda 3. Compact space is generally 7.5 foot or 8 foot wide by 15 foot deep. Most of those cars I just named are about 14.5 foot long and maybe 5.5 feet to 6 feet wide.
I just know that most of the people who drive bigger vehicles think they're compact.
Oh, yeah.
And I myself, as I think I've
Well,
mentioned
the one
before.
thing is those compact spaces are the ones furthest away from any of those buildings, and no one's going to park in them because no one wants to walk that far.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here?
I'll ask one more question. Does the county or the city have a code in reference to minimal size for compact cars?
The city does, 7.5 feet by 15 feet long, 7.5 feet wide by 15 feet long, where a regular space is usually 10 feet wide and 20 feet long, based on the angle that it goes in. But on a 90-degree entry, that's the standard space.
So the spaces I was looking at earlier, those were motorcycle spaces, 6 by 10?
Yes, now that was, that is more of a policy and how to get some of the parking requirements on. There is a need for motorcycle parking at some of our places, and we had done that for Earl's. You had approved that on the site plan where it was 6 by 8 type of motorcycle spaces, and 2 of those will count as one regular space.
I'm glad you said that at the end because I didn't want to hold up this hearing, so thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
I will open the floor now to anyone from the public who wishes to speak in favor. Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Okay. Staff?
The preliminary plat was reviewed by all jurisdictional agencies, and all comments have been met. With regards to that, staff recommends to forward a recommendation to City Council of approval and approval of the requested adjustments as noted on page 7, in addition to a condition that the easement agreement with the St. Sebastian Church is executed and recorded before final plat.
Thank you. Final deliberations and final questions from the committee. Any? Okay, then I would call for a motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation to the City Council for the preliminary plat of the Sebastian Medical Suites, 13035 US Highway 1, with the staff recommendation number 1, the 5 points of adjustments, and requirement number 2, recording the easement.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Hugan?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Yes.
Your motion passes.
Thank you.
Now you can go to work.
They're going to go through a process, Bill. They'll call you up.
Item number 4, a public hearing, not a quasi-judicial, no swearing necessary. Could we have your presentation, please?
Just to clarify, this is for Doolin's Auction House. a special exception to section 54-2-5.3.1B of the Sebastian Land Development Code to allow warehousing and an auction house as permitted use in the commercial 512 zoning district. The property address is 971 Sebastian Boulevard. Will anyone who wishes to provide any sort of information or testimony please rise? Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to give or present during this public hearing will be truthful and accurate, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Please identify yourself.
My name's Bill Polly. I live at 833 Barber Street, right here in Sebastian. I'm here tonight basically just to submit some papers. I have some of the conditions that were needing to be met in order for approval with the shared parking lot. Should I give these to you, Ms. Dory?
No, not at this time. They were
Okay.
just suggested conditions. We'll follow through and see if they are needed.
Okay. I'd like to start off and say good evening, everybody. Basically just want to, assure everybody that we want to meet all the requirements necessary in order to, enhance, the said location. We want to make it into a general merchandise auction house. Is there any questions?
What kind of items do you plan on auctioning?
Typically, it would be, your general merchandise, like an estate sale, furniture, paintings, jewelry, typically anything you would see at your basic consignment store.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I did notice in here, that you mentioned that any large items such as cars or motorcycles will be held at another location. Where's that location?
Well, we haven't established a location yet. We're going to focus on smaller items. One of the great things about that is I can be selective as to what merchandise we bring in. If we develop a need, to auction such items, then we could, determine where and when. We would present people with a preview, but worst case scenario, or even best case scenario, if we did have such an item, we could always have pictures, we could set up individual previews for anybody who would want to, come and look at it off-site. But our main focus is going to be on household items, smalls, paintings, grandfather clocks, things of that nature.
And these auctions, will they be typically at night or during the day, or has that been determined yet?
Yet our proposed operation times would be the first Saturday of every month. We would start a preview somewhere around 4 o'clock, start the auction around 6 o'clock, and close it down somewhere around 10 o'clock. Those are our plans.
Just once a month then, is that right?
For now, if we develop a need and the clientele that would, be advantageous for us to do it twice a month, that would be ideal. But I don't want to do it once every week like some typical auctions do. That way I've got some time, to restock, find the merchandise, things like that. That's the goal. So once per month, to start out. Down the road, if we develop a need and, establish a clientele that would come twice a month, we may do that. But for right now, once a month.
You have inventory now?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I have a couple questions and maybe concerns. One of the questions is, how are you going to fit the cars in this parking lot and still allow the other people to park their cars in the businesses?
We have shared parking agreements with 3 of the 4 tenants who currently occupy this building. One of the great things there is that we're right next door to the Legacy Martial Arts building. They don't have any hours of operation during the weekends, So with their parking lots that they are allocated, my parking lots that I would be allocated would be a total of 30 parking lots between the two. So for 30 cars, there would be no conflict of parking. In the event that there are, I've agreed with my neighbors to establish temporary parking signs for, businesses that have competitive hours or overlapping hours. And of the 4 businesses that are there, the Domino's, the hair salon, the Boost Mobile place, and the Legacy Martial Arts, we're only going to be in conflicting hours with 3 of those. And the the hair salon and the Boost Mobile place would only be for a half hour for one, and I think an hour for 2, because I've got the business hours of operation and competitive. So it's going to be minimal overlap for parking.
And my other concern is the driveway, I'll say your driveway, when it dumps onto 512, it's right at the beginning of a turn lane.
Correct.
It goes into the next shopping center and I guess the gas station and the bar. Do you see a problem with cars doing this? People wanting to get in the other shop and people coming out. I mean, with the more traffic that's going to generate.
I would say no. Being as that establishment was once a pub, as you may know, it was a Shark's Pub. So, and those other businesses are long established along that route. And as of to date, I don't know if anybody who's had conflicting, driving problems through there. But we would like to assure the board that, we would make every attempt necessary, to accommodate all the traffic, adhere to all the parking restrictions. We want to work on a good neighbor policy with our neighboring businesses. They've all signed paperwork that they are in favor of the auction house. They believe that it will increase foot traffic and therefore increase sales in their businesses. I haven't got a chance to talk to the owner of the Domino's. That was the only person that I haven't had a written agreement with. But even, once I get a chance to, I'm pretty sure they would be in favor of too, because, I'm sure there'll be hungry people at the auction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you say that, I'm concerned because you're showing us a picture of the parking area wide open when you want to do your business, but you're saying that there's going to be the other businesses operating. So I'm a little concerned with the amount of traffic that an auction brings. There is some auto auctions in the area where it gets pretty busy sometimes. So that's one of my concerns.
If I could address that, Mr. David. According to my research, our maximum occupancy will be 100 people, if I'm correct on that, Ms. Torrey?
I do have some comments on that, so I will wait till I have my presentation and I'll let you know.
As my understanding, our maximum occupancy will be 100 people before we are in violation of any, fire marshal codes. So, I think it is 3 occupancy per vehicle would be the standard.
One parking space for every 3 people based on maximum capacity.
Correct. So according to that math, I would only need a maximum of 33 parking spots to have 99 people there. I know that there will be probably people who drive their car by themselves or have 2 people or 4 or even 5. I know. So we want to establish, an agreement with our neighboring businesses that we can use their parking spots, after they're closed, to accommodate however many people we get there.
So with lease agreements, what is the typical parking spaces they give you?
I'm allocated, I believe it's 18.
Yes, per the site plan for the 3,600 square feet, it was 1 space per 200 with the original site plan. So with that amount of square footage, 18 of those parking spaces would be for Mr. Poley if he was going in as retail.
Which would be the majority of the parking spots, in that parking lot anyway. There's a total of 45, I believe, with 3 in the back. So a total of 48 with 3 handicap, I believe it is. The great thing about this arrangement is, like I said, is that the Legacy Martial Arts place is closed on the weekend. So we would have full access to all of their parking spots. Their 12 and my 18 gives us 30. So I foresee a potential problem with parking, but we would do whatever we had to accommodate.
Yeah, I would think even if the business was closed, I would think you would have to have some kind of agreement with them. My other question is, you plan on only doing this once a month, you say?
Correct. The general assembly part of the auction would be once a month.
Do you plan on having any employees in this business?
Yes.
How many employees?
I'd like to say probably on the auction day, would probably be 4 to 5 employees, you know, myself, my wife included, so probably 3 handlers of the merchandise. Rest of the people that would be there, we would hope would be customers.
This is 3 retail spaces you're creating, one out of 3?
It's actually 2 spaces that are right now. It's the old Thai cuisine restaurant and most of the old Sharky's Pub. When the Legacy Martial Arts place was established, they moved their firewall over a few feet into what was used to be the Sharky's Pub. So it kind of shrunk Sharky's and expanded the end retail unit. Thank you.
Okay, right now, there's a kitchen in there. Is that kitchen gonna stay in there, or?
Negative. No, we're not gonna serve any food. We're gonna
No,
take.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's because I do know there was that Thai place in there.
Correct.
And there's a tank, right now, what I see with the picture behind that.
Building? The only thing that is left in there is the hood.
The hood.
Yeah, and we're gonna leave it, you know, it's not in the way of anything that we wanna do. That general area will be for merchandise that has been sold to be collected at the end of the auction or at the buyer's leisure. So basically, it will be shelves in there, some floor space for larger items, chairs, tables, things like that.
Have you tried this concept somewhere else? Is this something new that you're doing here? I mean, because
No, I've never owned an auction house before. This will be the first one, but hopefully not the last one. I've seen in, you know, other areas that they're doing pretty well. As a matter of fact, there's one in Indian River County, right next to the old Habitat for Humanity, the old Democratic headquarters, right there on US 1 at 45th, I think it is. That's going to be an auction house. The gentleman who is doing that now owns one in Fort Pierce. So I see the growth of, you know, this concept, this type of business. I'm thinking I could capitalize on some of that. My father-in-law, George.
I just want to say that I have ran one for 10 years and never had any problems. If anything, it's going to be a benefit to the city.
George.
Sir, were you sworn in? Were you sworn in? Do you mind swearing in right now? I'm sorry. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you're about to give is going to be fully, I'm sorry, let me get my script so I don't mess it up. Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to give or present during this public hearing and that you have just presented in this public hearing will be truthful and accurate, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
As I was saying, I ran one for 10 years. I think it's going to be a very good asset for the city of Sebastian. You know, give a lot of people something to do on a Saturday night. I can't see any problem with parking. I will regulate the parking. We'll have somebody in the parking lot. There'll be nobody on 512 at all. Any other questions you have on that?
Yeah, I guess it's my turn.
Yeah, like I was saying again, the experience, I mean, and you said there's one down there in US 1 that they're thinking about opening or what have you. But also a concern is, once you have all these auctions or these people coming in and out with that traffic, right next to Cumberland Farms also, you know, that's...
Well, it's quite a ways from...
No, it's the next lot, right next door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I mean, the beginning is fine, but, you know, it's like everything.
Mr. Alvarez.
Yes, go ahead.
The parking lot that is right adjacent to it is for the TJ's Pizza. There's a kids consignment store.
Okay.
There's, and then I think there's 5 retail stores, and then it's the
Right, you're right.
Cumberland Farms. But there is that shared parking lot that's there. So, I mean, it's not right next door, but it is in close proximity that there could be a potential for problems there. I do see that, but I don't think that it is, going to be so detrimental to, our neighboring businesses that, will impact them, that bad. At least I don't think so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I also, I'm really concerned about 100 people, and I know that we think that 3 people will come in a vehicle, but they won't. I know that.
Sure, I can see that too, but
And I also am concerned that the intersection of Barber Street, where Cumberland Farms is, and 512 is a very busy intersection, and there is confusion right now with people getting into the turn lane. I've experienced this myself, and probably most of us have, that I know that I don't want to quash your zeal. I have been an attendant at auction houses for years, not in Florida though.
Okay.
And usually have found them to be in locations that have not barely enough parking, but more than enough parking, which is a concern for me because you also have the people loading things up and getting them out, and if they can't take it all today, then there's the traffic the next day or the day after, and I'm concerned about.
Sure, I've considered that too, and what we would like to have ideally, is, as you can see on the plan, there's that through street, the one-way through street in the back, So most of the loading up, we would like to funnel towards the back,
Which would be off the roadway.
I know the property very well.
Right, so the road won't be blocked.
Yeah, I know that. Okay.
But that's one of our recommendations for, relieving some of the congestion of the traffic there. And if most of the people that are leaving are picking up products, that are going out that back street, they will come out actually closer to that, side road by the Winn-Dixie, I'm not sure exactly what the name of that road is, but it's on, down the road a little bit further from the Cumberland Farms, so would give people merging in and out a little bit more roadway.
Okay. Staff.
Yes, staff would like to jump in with their analysis and findings.
What is staff working?
A little procedure too, so why this is being brought before you, and facts and findings that you have to make a recommendation to City Council for. So when Mr. Poley came into our office and asked to be here, we had to examine exactly what the use is because we don't have an auction house here in Sebastian. So we had to break it down into the components of what this was going to be. And yes, for about 30 days, Mr. Poley and his staff and people will be delivering items to his 2 units. So we kind of looked at that. That is warehousing. That is why it's not a mini storage. It's actually where you're storing. It's not wholesaling. It's warehousing. And that is not an approved or a permitted or a conditional use in the C512 zoning. So that's the action that is bringing this before you tonight. So he is, in essence, asking for a special exception to have this warehousing use that is allowed in the industrial zoning district that now he would like to put it in the C512 zoning district. The other component is the actual auction, which is being initially proposed at one time a month. We certainly hope that he is successful and that maybe he will have this every Saturday or twice a month, but we do have to look forward to that in our planning for that type of use. We could have stated that the auction house was a special use also because we don't have any requirements in our code, but we kind of figured that it was similar to an assembly, no different than the Italian American Club. I know they're selling beer there, but the assembly of the Elks Club, a private club or lodge. Mr. Poley has submitted a kind of a conceptual or the floor plan that he would like to go forward with, and he does note that there are 90 seats in there. So I did bring that before to the building official to kind of clarify. So for his capacity to be established at 90 or 100, those would have to be permanent seats, similar to a movie theater, where you can say that's the amount of seats, that's the capacity. If those are folding chairs or any type of movable type of chairs, it then goes to the building code based on a square footage of the units on what that maximum capacity could be. And certainly if there was some items that were advertised and he has a good crowd that comes in, you may have standing people or more chairs would be set out. So the 90 is not necessarily the exact maximum capacity that we've worked out yet. It could be more, or it could be just the 90. It may come close to the 90 that Mr. Poley feels that he can accommodate in those two units. But it could, based on building code, be more, and then we would require more parking. When the site plan was brought in, we did discuss that 18 parking spaces are established for these units. With the martial arts and possibly some of the other businesses closing, he's certainly going to be close to possibly meeting the required that he would need, based on if we do parking based on capacity, one space per 3 people. But in reality, and similar to, we would hate a scenario similar to our church flea markets on Saturdays that did so well that parking really became an issue for just even a temporary use. So we really want to get in place some parking plans, and that is one of the conditions that staff would like to see, more of a formal plan of where exactly, if you have 100 cars coming or you have 50, 60 cars coming, where can we put those all? There certainly are some adjacent sites that will be empty at the time of the auctions, that they can work out some we'd like some formal written type of agreements. The issue, one of the concerns, is that right next to this site there are 2 vacant lots. So if you were to park on an adjacent site, you would walk out to the 512 sidewalk and then come in. But if it's raining or you see a closer way, you may cut through those vacant lots. So we just wanted some plan possibly with that would also be as part of that overflow parking. You have before you, we did send out letters on this. We did receive a couple of calls, and you do have a letter of objection before you, which I'll have a copy for you. The residents' concerns are noise and traffic coming from the alley. So we had not, when we talked to Mr. Poley, this is kind of coming up tonight, that yes, when those people, some of the patrons do purchase something, they are going to want to put those in their car that night, I assume, and then take them with them. Staff would recommend that there is no additional activity in that alley. That was the concerns of the residents. And that alley, I would hate to see a lineup of 20 cars or something coming behind the building waiting to get stuff into their car. So that may be some sort of plan that we would have to think up and come up with. The special exception process, as you can see, and we don't have a lot, so bear with me. I'm going to go through our staff report because it does outline it. There are required findings of facts that you should, at least in your motion, state that you have addressed and feel that they do meet those 3 criteria. Staff on the first one we agreed that it would be met if there were some written acceptance from the adjacent business owners, and Mr. Poley has mentioned that he's already gotten some of those from 3 of them.
Yes, I did.
We foresee that, say, the Domino's is open at night, there's going to have to be some sort of temporary signage, and we just don't want hand-printed type of signs, but more some professional signs that you would put in front of those spaces that says parking for Domino's only, why Domino's was open during the auction. So that does eliminate some spaces from that site, but something like that we feel could work. With regards to the second criteria, besides the actual nights of the auctions, I don't think, even with them bringing in items in during the week, that there is any additional traffic that wouldn't be there if you did have 3,600 square feet of retail and some deliveries daily for items. So the increase of traffic during the days when there's not the auction, we feel the warehousing is really not going to affect this site. It's the number 3, the consistent with the comprehensive plan and the code of ordinances. And staff is going to leave that up to you if you feel it does meet the comprehensive plan, because it does have some exclusions for that 512 zoning districts of merchandising of secondhand goods and industrial uses or other activity which may generate adverse impacts with more intense commercial industrial activities. But on the other hand, it is a community gathering place, and we do allow assembly places in the 512, and it's a specific time retail, which we do allow the retail. So it was hard for staff to determine if it did meet the comprehensive plan, and I'll leave that up for your decision and discussion. I just wanted to quickly go over the conditions of approval that staff is recommending, or that you would recommend to City Council. Written verification of the business hours and the agreements with those that have nighttime hours, and the temporary signage that would be required to keep spaces open for those businesses that are open during the auction hours. We'd like a little bit more. We have some good floor plans, but we would like maybe, and I'll work with Mr. Poley to get those, if we can piece together the adjacent site plans to show us exactly where a more formal parking, overflow parking plan with some details on when the auction is over, how we would get the patrons that have bought items to get those delivery. We also, with some sort of the necessary measures for the pedestrian safety, maybe they do have to rope off those vacant lots so the pedestrians do not go through them and do walk out to the existing 512 sidewalk and then go to Mr. Poley's front door. With regards to the condition that states commercial regulations for signs will be applied versus the special event, during a special event, they would be allowed to put signs along the road, hang some banners, things like that for just during that auction, but this would be a permanent use of the site, so it would be the commercial signs based on how much square footage would be allowed for the building. I do not have this in my staff report, but going past the site, we would like to add to that condition that any of the unused cabinet signs would be removed, because right now there are 3 signs. Unless the auction house was going to use all 3, any of those unused, instead of just being blank, and they are getting a little older, that they would come down, and just the signs that Mr. Poley is going to use for that auction house. I think one of the signs is in the half unit, so maybe have that centered more. That the parking to the rear alley would be prohibited except for the 3 parking spaces for staff. But I'm going to add to that also including delivery or pickup traffic also along that alley, because that was the concerns of the residents. I had 2 phone calls and then our 1 letter that was submitted. The overflow parking on Sebastian Boulevard would be prohibited, and any of the outside storage of larger items as they're acquired during the month would also be prohibited on the site. The section on page 5 that you also would part of your motion there are specific Planning and Zoning Commission findings. There are 6 items, and those should be addressed and kind of reviewed during your discussion. Under my additional comments, we did note that there was, regarding the parking that was there, we'd like to come up with a specific capacity once he does work with Wayne and more of a formal site plan on that, so that if we do find out that we need 40 or 50 parking spaces, again, the overflow parking would have specific areas where we're getting that additional parking. With that, I just would like your consideration of Mr. Poley's presentations, answers your questions, and some of the concerns that staff has. At this time, we're not ready to make a formal recommendation based on what you may discuss on your findings of facts.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition?
Would like not to, nobody speaking, but we would like to make a note for the record that we did receive a letter of opposition from Richard May, 929 Fulton Way, and that was received by staff.
We each have a copy of that letter, and had the opportunity to read it. Do we want it read into the record?
If you're going to consider this as part of your evidentiary, we should read this into the record. Okay. Either you can or I can, whichever you prefer.
I'll read it in.
Okay.
This is addressed to the Planning and Zoning Board. Attention. The proposed auction house/warehouse causes me concern for the 700 block of Highway 512 Sebastian Boulevard in Sebastian, Florida. I am across the street at 929 Fulton Way. Because of previous experiences with auction houses, they usually attract large crowds, which will be needed for them to run their business. With these large attendances, you could expect to need a large parking area. With the limited parking space in the area proposed, parking could be a problem. With large crowds of people, you are going to have a certain amount of litter which will be left to spread in our community. Also, with auction houses, there are usually loud speakers used to entice people to bid and to reach out to the large crowds attending. In previous years, there have been loud bars with lots of noise in the general area. My concern for the 700 block of 512 and Sebastian Boulevard is loud noise, litter, and overflow parking. It is signed sincerely, Richard F. May.
Just a quick comment on that. That is an unsworn statement, and but it largely appears to be just a list of concerns and not a whole lot of facts. But you need to keep in mind that that is not provided under oath.
Thank you.
If I could address some of these issues. One, it's going to be held inside. We're not going to have any loud megaphones or loudspeakers that will emanate past the closed door or even past the parking lot. No more so than the ambient traffic noise that this gentleman may hear across of Barber Street. He would be, I guess, on Fulton Way. That would be across 4 lanes of 512 there, the 20-foot median, and then a sidewalk and a swell. So, I mean, the noise, I can assure this gentleman, would not be an issue. We don't plan on making that kind of a ruckus. The overflow parking, again, we will address, in any way that we can to accommodate and alleviate any such problems with parking. Parking being prohibited on the side of 512 anyway, any vehicle parked there would be subject to ticket and tow. So it wouldn't take long before people would learn, don't park there. The litter, I can assure you that none of my clientele will be throwing litter anywhere near the vicinity of this gentleman's house. And of course, we would make every attempt and effort to keep the upkeep and the appearance, pleasant. It's not going to be, garbage cans outside, for people just throw them. I would say that, there would probably be more trash and stuff in the parking lot of the Cumberland Farms than would be in the parking lot of our auction. So some of these complaints and concerns are definitely warranted, but I think overall we can meet, any requirements necessary that the board sees fit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe it's time for us to make some deliberations on.
I'd like to just make one statement. Years ago, there were several auction places up in Melbourne. I used to go up there with my wife, and actually I always had a good experience up there, but it was and one of the places that we would go to is very similar to the location where you're at. It's in a strip shopping center off a main road. And at times there was a lot of people that would show up. Parking was never a big issue. Sometimes we had to walk a little ways. And if we bought something, and we did buy things on occasion, they had it so we had to take it out the front door. So I don't know if that would be something that would be any different. Another auction we used to go to was up in Cocoa, and that was a little bit strange. It was in a smaller thing off a beaten path, so to speak, but they had very limited parking, and people were parking in there quite a bit. But from what I'm seeing with Mr. Polly here and what he's trying to oppose, I think he's trying to think it through, but there are some concerns. One of the parking, some of the noise, things of that nature. But I know other people were successful doing something very similar to this within a very limited area. So just wanted to make that comment.
Mr. Roth?
Fulton Way is across Sebastian Boulevard.
Correct.
It's not behind this, and I've often wondered how something like this would work out when we were approving businesses to go on Sebastian Boulevard with the back of it with an alley, and then on the other side of that alley, residential properties. So I think I would have a concern about pickups in the back, just for the reason of, noise and additional traffic on an alleyway that's not built to be, handling traffic, albeit, limited in short time duration. That is a concern. I can understand his point about the loudspeakers being inside, and if the audience is controlled inside, I don't see that would be a problem outside with sound. I guess my biggest concern is, again, we're on the Plan Commission, we're looking at something that doesn't fit a perfect mold, and we're trying to come up with a win-win for everyone, for the owner and for the city and for the residents. And this may be difficult, but I think there might be a way to do it. I'm just not so sure it doesn't pop up in front of me right now.
Thank you.
If there was some sort of condition, how would this affect businesses, that if it wasn't an item that they bought, they could carry out directly to their car, but had to get something onto a dolly or something larger into a car, is pickup the next day or Monday, would that affect your auction business?
No,
Because
not
I
at
do
all.
have concerns that this would be at like 10 o'clock at night, people slamming their doors and vans and getting
Absolutely.
loading cars. So if
In the
there's
alleyway,
a
correct.
pickup time, would that affect your auction business, do you think?
Absolutely, Ms. Dory. It is standard practice, and for some auction houses that they have a designated pickup time for large items, things that they can't carry out, i.e. furniture, chairs, couches, things like that. We can certainly accommodate, those specific needs, for those items at a later date. We can also arrange delivery, that we can deliver to somebody, at their convenience if they don't want to bring, or they don't have a truck. A lot of times people will buy things with no means to take them home anyway. So, of course, that is certainly an option, and maybe the most reasonable one. If to eliminate any, flow traffic through the back, we can certainly designate a specific pickup time or delivery time, that alleviates any of that overflow traffic through the back. Thank you, Ms. Dory.
Let's make one other comment. If you recall, when we were discussing the Cumberland Farms, that was one of our concerns, was deliveries in that alleyway back there. And very similar, he has an alleyway back there as well. But we said okay for Cumberland Farms.
If I may, Mr. Rick, I actually use that back alleyway a lot. I have a shop that's right down the road next to the Italian American Club. So when I leave my parking lot, it's convenient for me to drive behind, the businesses there on 512 into the parking lot of the Cumberland Farms to pick up whatever we may need that day. There's also dumpsters in the back there for garbage pickup and stuff. So it is designed for limited traffic, and we would certainly appease the board and eliminate all traffic back there if that's what the board recommends.
Mr. Reyes?
I will say, I don't think noise is gonna be an issue. I gas up at that Cumberland Farms, and the noise coming out of their speakers on the gas pumps, I'm surprised nobody's complained about it. I walked in there and said, Jesus, it's almost like you're at a concert. It's really loud, but they're aimed at each other, so apparently it doesn't go off to the public out on site. So I don't think he's gonna have any issue with noise. I think the only issue is the parking. But if you can get consent and agreements from everybody, I don't see a problem with this. Those sites have been vacant. I'd love to see 3 retail stores there, to create some more jobs. But I don't think we can keep this from you. I think it's a good idea.
If I could submit to the board now, I actually have signed shared parking agreements with the other, the 3 of the 4 tenants that we spoke of, and I also have their hours of business I'll give this to you, Ms. Dory. I think, you know, we've looked for a place to have this auction house now for over a year. You know, the biggest problem has always been the parking. We can find, you know, buildings that are big enough, you know, but only have limited parking space. We can find buildings that are too small, you know, but have super adequate parking. This is, I like to say it's kind of Goldilocks. It's, you know, just right, you know, with the legacy parking spots that will not be used during our time of business. And, you know, the parking spots that are allocated, that's a total of 30 parking spots in the front with the 3 in the back. You know, like I said, I can see a potential for, you know, excess parking needed. I have a verbal agreement with one of the gentlemen who rent the building next door, Tim Borden from Treasure Coast Realty. He's given me the contact info for the gentleman and lady who actually own the building. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a hold of them. They were on an extended cruise. But I'm working on them, you know, to try to get some type of permission to use their parking spot if necessary. There's also a 40-foot lot, you know, that's undeveloped right next door to it. I've not yet been able to get a hold of the owner, but I do have his mailing address in New York. I'm going to send him a letter and hope that we can work out some type of agreement that if we bring that 40-foot spot up to current parking codes with either some type of, you know, loose shell, you know, something that's adequate for parking, you know, such as like what's in the shared parking lot of the Italian American Club, we could designate at least another 12 parking spots in that area. So there is potential for extra parking there contingent on, you know, agreements with the owners. It would be ideal to use that vacant 40-foot, you know, plat or lot that's right next door to it. That way there wouldn't have to be any foot traffic on the sidewalk. But our contingency plan, you know, for not being able to use that vacant parking spot would be using the parking spot that's already available in the business that's next door. I am not, you know, I would like to be able to, if necessary, work out some type of financial arrangement with the people who own that Treasure Coast Realty parking lot, you know, some type of parking lease, some type of liability insurance to alleviate any liability they may have of people parking there that's not, you know, a customer of theirs. I don't object to, you know, enter into agreements like that with these people as soon as I can get a hold of them.
I'd like to add one more thing or ask another question. Okay. When this is glass storefront.
Correct.
And I'm concerned about everything you're gonna bring in there being stacked up against the glass and it looking like a storage in there.
Our plan, all right, is to leave those glass, you know, those glass fronts, you know, visible so that people can actually see inside there. You know, we believe that, you know, people who see people having a good time inside may be inclined to just come on in, you know. So we don't have any intentions to block those storefronts, you know. We want to keep it very nice in appearance, you know, to attract the kind of clientele that we want there, you know. It's not going to be like any low-end items, you know. We're not going to be selling used coffee pots and, you know, things like that. We want to establish, you know, a middle to the high-end clientele.
I have a couple questions. I think.
Ms. Lowe's.
I would sure love this a whole lot more if you were able to find it in an industrial zone, maybe the airport or something. And I know I know you've tried that.
Oh, yes, you can ask Ms. Dory. This has been an ongoing thing for some time.
I have a question about the agreements that you have with other people. Are those other people tenants?
Yes, they're actually.
Okay. What happens if they leave? I mean, what happens to your agreement if your next door neighbor leaves for whatever reason and you have a parking agreement? When he leaves, your agreement leaves.
Understandable. We would like to be able to encourage a friendly, cohabitation between businesses, if somebody were to leave, somebody's business fail, and of course, that would, eliminate our parking agreement. We would try to procure another parking agreement with whatever tenant is coming in there.
But what if you can't? I mean, that's the reality of the real world.
Sure.
My name is Frank Lopez. I'm the property owner there.
Mm-hmm.
And if that should ever be the case where we should lose one of the other tenants, it would have to be a thing where I have to talk to the new tenant, say, the situation, we have an auction house here. You have to be able to agree to giving up so many spaces at these certain times and hours, or I wouldn't lease to them if that was ever an issue in the future. I can assure you of that if that ever came to be the case.
The other businesses that are currently operating there now, would they be open and operating during the time you're having an auction?
There is very minimal overlap. According to the hours that they've posted already, the Domino's Pizza, of course, is open till 1 o'clock on Saturday, 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night. Fortunately, that's on the way other end of the parking lot. The two businesses that are right next to us on the west side would be the Lux Hair Salon and the Boost Mobile cellular place. Their hours of operation close at 6:30 and 7 on the nights that we intend to have our assembly. So there would be very minimal overlap. If we started our preview at 4 o'clock on that Saturday, so there would be about 3 hours of overlap, 2.5 to 3 hours for those businesses. If that's a problem, we could always move our preview date, to the day before, or designate another time for it, that it's not competing with their businesses or their business hours. Again, like I said, I've got the signed written agreement from the tenants, and all three tenants, that we will be competing for parking with, excluded the Domino's. That's the only one I haven't talked to. They all seem to be in favor, of cohabitating together with the parking. They expressed to me that they believe the more foot traffic there, the better chances are that their business will be successful. So I think if we work together, that we can accommodate everybody's goals.
One last question. Other than your auction nights, is the business going to be open during the week or things of that nature?
Yes, we plan to work on a Tuesday through Saturday business to be closed Mondays and Sundays. Pretty much a 9 to 4 or 9 to 5 business hours for, my wife would be there during those business hours to take in consignments of anybody who wants to bring an item in. There's paperwork and contracts that have to be filled out. So for somebody to bring something in during regular business hours, there would be somebody there.
Would there be any selling during that time?
No, that's not our intent. Our intent is to have a 1 day a month, where we will be selling the items that 1 day a month.
I like your enthusiasm, Mr. Bali.
Well, listen, it's been an iron in the fire, for a while, and this is as close as we've come to, establishing this. I think it would be a benefit to the community. It would give people something to do that doesn't cost a whole lot of money. If you don't want to spend any money, or if you just want to see some people have a good time, I think it would be attractive to, a lot of people in this community.
I have one more comment, and I'm trying to see how we can fit this in, or invent a new path. And you all know that I've got a pretty open mind. But a regular retail has customers who come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go. So rarely would we have 50 or 60 cars that would come, park, and stay there for 3 hours.
We do it, some of the uses, they're allowed in 512, but the original parking plan accommodated for
But then we
that parking.
wouldn't have enough parking places, would we? We'd say, no, this doesn't fit there, because there aren't enough parking places. And that's what concerns me. I'm really concerned about. I want your business to be successful,
Oh, me too.
And I would love to have an auction house nearby.
Now, the code does allow, though, in our parking section, that if we did have a site plan that came in, that right off the bat had the original auction house, and they needed 75 parking spaces, and there's only 50 on there, the code does allow to have shared parking agreements with up to 50% of the parking spaces can be off-site, as long as they're not more than 500 feet. But it does go into some details that a shared parking agreement, and I think bringing up that maybe those parking agreements with different tenants or owners, and then it changes, we may want to require a more formal document that's a recorded agreement that talks about that it needs to follow with successors and assigns, if that's the direction you
Goes
want
with
to
the
take.
property rather than the person.
Yes, and with regards to the vacant lot, which is possible an idea, but if the owner of those vacant lots said, you can use our property for temporary parking, similar to what the New York barber shop just had to go through tonight, we would want a formal site plan application. We've got to get some stabilized base and the access agreements, and so it may be just maybe easier to get those shared parking agreements and just rope off the vacant lot so that they do have to come through, walk out to the sidewalk to 512 and then get to the auction house's property. It's doable to use the vacant lots, but there's some extra site plan steps that you'd have to get out of area property owners to agree to. But the Planning and Zoning Commission in your deliberation is the use. With regards to site plan and parking agreements, if that's part of the conditions, we can certainly get that and work those items out. But your consideration is this special exception and the use itself of the auction house and the warehousing.
Recommending it to city council, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and on page 5, your findings have to be these 6 items. Is that the use is designed and located and proposed to be operated so that public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. I don't see anything unsafe about this, as long as everything would be, there were people at 6 o'clock when the big rush of people come, and at the end that there are people out there directing traffic and making sure nobody parks on 512. It does not present an unduly adverse effect upon other properties in the impacted area in which it is located. Based on the scale and intensity and operation of the use, shall not generate unreasonable noise, traffic congestion, or other potential nuisances or hazards to contiguous residential properties. Conforms to all applicable provisions of the district in which the use is to be located. So is this warehousing, auction house, if it was industrial, and how it met those conditions and requirements, is it also meeting it in the 512 zoning district? It has to satisfy specific criteria listed in our conditional use, which it was not a conditional use, so there isn't this additional criteria. And is it consistent with the Code of Ordinances and Comprehensive Plan? So all of those considerations should be based in your motion and your recommendation. If you feel that this use could meet all those conditions with some of those items with the conditions that we propose, then you would want to recommend approval. If you feel that one of these findings, it does not meet one of those findings and may present something, then that may be consideration of your recommendation also.
Okay, thank you. If we have no further deliberation, then we need to have a motion, please.
Are we ready to do that, or have we talked this through as far as?
If we want to discuss more, certainly we can.
Would it make sense to go through them point by point to clarify in our own minds if it does before we take action? Or have we already done that?
You can make
Whatever you
that,
want.
you can make a motion for each point if you wish.
I mean, all we're really doing is making a motion to refer this to the city council based on any conditions that we may want to add. Is that correct?
The process does require, though, that you make a motion that you find it meets these required findings of facts.
And the findings need to be based on competent substantial evidence. That's before you.
Might be better to do it one at a time then.
Yeah, how do we feel about item 1?
Make a motion.
Yeah. Hearing all that we've talked about, my own personal opinion is I think that I can justify in my mind that it would not be a problem as far as safety and public health and welfare, should we recommend this? Does anyone else feel to the counter to that?
No, I think it would be appropriate.
Is there any unduly adverse effect on other properties in the area? If we're looking at controlling use on the alley, we're kind of creating a barrier there to keep the business in the front. That might be a way to handle that.
Well, there again, evidently he's got written consent from his neighbors as far as the parking. He's got I take it you're the property owner, is that right? And he's evidently affirmative for this project and is making a stipulation that he'd be willing to talk to any new tenants that they would be subject to the same conditions. Is that a fair statement? Right.
And what about number 3? How does the commission feel about number 3 then?
I think we've discussed that, and
Yeah.
I think that we've debated those issues, that yes, there are some concerns, but I think it could be acceptable.
With the suggestions about having a different delivery day, or actually them offering
Right.
deliveries, if that is how you feel with that condition, it would meet this finding, we should add that as an additional condition to the list on page 4.
Well, I think our main concern was that the deliveries would not be done out of the back door, wasn't it?
The way the building's actually set up, it would be easier for me to do all the front loading anyway, because there's 2 double doors on both units, and only 1 single door, on the back. So it would actually be easier and more advantageous for me to do all of the loading and stuff out front. And again, we would have no objections to, designating delivery times and specific pickup times, to ease any congestion of traffic.
Well, would it be a fair statement to say that that exception would only be at night, but during the day it would be acceptable?
I think it was a concern of the adjoining neighbors that there'd be no delivery or added traffic back there for picking up. I think that was a phone call you received?
Correct. But Mr. Polly has suggested, since his main doors are in the front, that there could be out of the front. Staff would just have concerns that if you have 100 people, hopefully all made purchases, and say half of those are large items, that you still have 50 cars possibly, or 30 cars, wanting to load these items in all at 10 o'clock at night, which now you're affecting Mr. May across the streets. So that's why I was thinking maybe another day, or offering delivery service, that we don't have that delivery or the load up on the site at 10 o'clock at night.
And if I may, in my experience, like I said, I've never run an auction before, but I've been to hundreds. Typically, you don't have a full capacity the whole time. Some people come there for the first few hours. Some people come in late for the last few hours. It's very hard, from what I've seen, to keep that many people in one place for, 3-4 hours at a time. Some people are, early risers, early birds will get there early, stay for a few hours. Some people will straggle in late, so I can see the problem, but in my experience, you have a constant flow of, people coming in, so.
Mr. Polly, then, if I buy something at 7 o'clock, I'm ready to leave, there's somebody there helping loading my car up front in the same area, though, where there may be people coming to get my parking space, so is there load ups in this parking area?
Well, there's no designated loading area in the front. The sidewalks are handicap accessible, so if we have to move something on a dolly, we can get it out there. Like I said, for most people, who come to these auctions and buy larger things, a lot of times they don't fit in the car they bring. Half the people there would probably have pickup trucks. Most of the people would only have small vehicles, compact vehicles. So, delivery would probably be the best option, to alleviate any of those concerns, which, we have no problem doing.
The hours of operation, say like 6 to 10. Can we say no deliveries or no pickup after that? I mean, are you allowed to, is is there code in there that we can keep them from doing that, or are they allowed to pick up anytime?
Well, it'd be hard to, at what size do we say you can't load up to your car? Maybe I have something I can carry out, but maybe there's something a little heavier, and I just need assistance, but I don't have a dolly, so I think it'd be hard to determine what items could be loaded into a car and which couldn't. But I do have concerns that on the larger items, that now we're not connected on either side here. We don't want the pickups, the load-ups in the back, but we also, I maybe don't want them in the front either at the same time that the auction is occurring, because you're gonna have people leaving and people coming in and trying to get into the space that the car that just left. I'm not sure, and I apologize, because I've not been to an auction, so I'm not sure how that all...
No, and that's quite all right.
These are our planning thoughts, and...
That's absolutely quite all right. I mean, we could certainly have, worst case scenario, just spitballing here, we can actually have, a box truck of something like a small box truck, like one of them tiny U-haulers of some type, or even a cargo van of something that can be parked out front specifically for deliveries only, that's parked closest to the door, that we can shuttle into, any product. Say they buy a dining room set, with a couple leaves and a few chairs. We can have one parking spot designated for our delivery truck. If they leave before the auction is closed at 7 o'clock, we can have somebody on staff that can load that van with their product and drive it right to their house. Typically, in my experience, most people don't travel more than 20, 30 miles for an auction, to go to Cocoa or something. You must really want to go to an auction. But again, we expect most of our deliveries and most of our clientele to be our neighbors, who live within a few miles, so delivery, certainly wouldn't be a problem.
We're already tight for parking, but if we were to establish a pretty decent overflow parking plan, and we found enough parking spaces for you, what if we designated 2 parking spaces that would remain open, that were for load up only? And so that if you did purchase something that you needed to now bring your truck in while the auction was still going on, we wouldn't want it to happen at 10 o'clock, but then those spaces would be the area where you could back your truck in. I'm assuming while the auction is going on, there are people to help load up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because we're already short of parking, so we would want to make sure, though, that we have adequate parking off-site also, though.
We would have several staff on hand on the night of auction, to basically display the items, help people get them loaded up, police the parking, so there would be people on staff there that would do that, so I can certainly, I can certainly agree.
Could be an option.
Yeah, I can certainly agree to designating loading parking spots, for people who want to pick up their stuff and take it that day.
We can put additional signage and have parking cones outside that designated area, whatever we need to do to make it flow smoothly.
Probably your best answer is that people come within the next 48 hours to pick up what they bought.
Sure.
For the most part. I know my own personal experience, I've often purchased things that I misjudged the size of my vehicle.
Yeah. Oh, I have somebody that does that all the time. Now, I could see people coming in there and buying entire bedroom sets.
Sure.
2 or 3 bedroom sets, a living room sets. Now
Sure.
we're looking at a big truck coming to pick this stuff up. How are we gonna deal with that?
We would use one of the smaller U-Haul vans, the small, like the, 10 by 10 box van, whatever it is. Fortunately, if we have to make more than one trip, we could do it.
It's gonna be a great day for you when that happens.
Yeah, listen, if it
all
works like that, I will be happy to go the extra mile.
Well, Mr. Reyes, if that patron said, I have a large truck coming, and it's one truck during the day, that's what the alley is for those intermittent pickups and load-ups. Where our just concern is if you have 30 cars and you have 20 people lined up in the rear alley to get that all at the same time at 10 o'clock at night. But during the day, a car coming, that's no different than a business that's going to be a retail business operating on those units.
Okay, thank you.
I guess for item number 4, we can't say that it conforms unless we make some stipulations, because it doesn't conform. And that's why we need to make an adjustment.
Well, that's why we're making the exception.
Right.
Well, that would be if you feel the conditions then is allowing this use to conform to the C512. So with the addition of the conditions. If those conditions are met, then you feel the use conforms to the applicable provisions of the C512 district and the intent.
Okay. No other comments, huh? You guys are a lot of help.
No, well,
Well, I'll make a recommendation that we.
Thank you.
That we make a motion to send to the city council recommendation for the special exception request for warehousing auction house at County Road 512 in the zoning district at 971 Sebastian Boulevard with, weren't there some conditions? Yes, with the conditions as stated on page 4. Four. Yes, a written verification of business hours of all tenants, the submittal of an overflow parking plan, commercial regulations for signs, and parking to the rear of the building along the alley will be prohibited except in approved parking spaces. Overflow parking along Sebastian Boulevard will be prohibited, and outside storage or display of items anywhere on the site will be prohibited.
could we also add pickup of large items limited to propose certain times that would come in with these exceptions? In other words, I guess what I'm saying, so we can control when the large items would be picked up, say, for example, before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or they would be delivered between 9 and 4, or could leave the building between 9 and 4, so that wouldn't interfere with other traffic at this site. Does that make sense, Mr. Carter? Do you know what I'm trying to come up with? I'm not sure.
Staff would suggest something to the wording that load-ups or pickups would be in a specific area in front of the building during auction hours.
Right.
So that does leave it open that outside of auction hours, you could still use the alley if you needed to. Most likely they'll be in front, but during the auction hours, it would be specifically in front of the building. Possibly, depending on the parking thing, possibly specific parking spaces.
Why don't we word it like that, then?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you want Mr. Carter to reword that?
I think she did just fine.
And I'm probably not as good as Mr. Ginsburg would take it.
I was going to say
Unless Cynthia has
let's
something.
maybe shorten that wording just a wee bit.
I would like to add that as a condition, what Ms. Dory has just stated.
We'll get some good writing, we'll get some
There we
good
go.
verbiage of it, but the intent is during auction hours, the load-up would be in front of the building in a specific space.
And if I may suggest an addition to your motion, that the agreement between existing tenants and the owner of the property be in writing.
I thought that was under the first item, written verification of business hours and agreements with those who have nighttime hours regarding auction events.
I'm talking about the parking, the shared parking is what I'm concerned about.
It's on the item number 2.
Is it?
Well, actually,
Yeah, to me, that's a really important.
it does say, it says temporary signs will be required to keep parking available for those units during auction events.
But I think your point is with the owners.
We're going to be doing some shared parking here.
Right.
And I would like to have the shared parking agreements in writing and with the owner of the building that when those tenants leave, the parking agreements do not leave with them.
Gotcha. I think Mr. Frank has already stipulated that any future tenants would be subjected to the existing shared parking agreement, upon
I'd like to see
accepting their
that in
lease.
writing.
Right, we need
We
to,
can
we need to
certainly-
have that as a condition.
We can certainly supply you with that.
Yes, I'll add that
Thank you.
condition that we have a written agreement from both the existing businesses adjacent and also from the property owner.
We're halfway there already.
All right.
So that's with regards to condition number 1, correct?
Yes.
With number 2,
And,
those were the adjacent property owners.
yeah, that'd be applicable as well.
Those would be, we wanted those to be maybe more formal recorded agreements so that they pass on to successors and assigns. Was that the discussion earlier?
That's what it takes.
Whether it's recorded or not, would that become part of the record anyway, whether it's recorded or not, if a city council approves it?
This is in regards to, we may need to find 20 or 30 parking spaces off-site, and because they're the vacant lots between. So you can go to the owner to the west and say, hey, can I use this on certain nights? And they may say yes, but if that owner was to sell the property or tenants, we don't have that in writing, or even if we had it in writing or whatever, but this would be more formal that does state that parking agreement forwards to the new owners.
Then we want it recorded then.
Did that meet your concern, Mr.?
Yeah.
I'll second the motion then.
Can we just clarify the motion for the clerk's benefit?
Well, I second it so we can clarify it.
Have it read back.
Can you read that back to us, please?
Must be executed and recorded.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I suggest that you amend the motion to ensure that it complies with the, to give specific findings that's subject to these conditions?
On page 5?
Thank you.
All of the findings on page 5, section 10, numbers 1 through 6 are met?
Yes, I'll amend my original motion to include on page 5, the 5 items under the Planning and Zoning, or 6 items, excuse me, under Planning and Zoning Commission rules. Do I need to read those?
It's the conditions that are in section 54-2-6.2D. It's the duty of the Planning and Zoning Committee here. So it can be copied from there.
I'll accept that amendment with my second.
And now we'll call for a vote.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
No.
Mr. Hugan?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
No.
Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
This
Good
was
luck.
a recommendation to City Council. It will be one of the meetings in September where the formal hearing will be held and the final vote.
Will you
work
email
with
me or
Yes.
let me know what date and time we need to be there? Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
The remaining item on our agenda this evening is a discussion of our unfinished business, the discussion of future development for vacant parcels located on the east side of Indian River Drive. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that's going to take longer than my eyesight will maintain this evening.
I think we ought to table that for the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, no objections to that?
No.
So
Not
be it.
whatsoever.
So be it.
It's not that we don't feel it's important, but
It deserves more time.
I think we feel it's important enough that we need to give it a lot of time.
Yes, I would
And,
agree.
Definitely need some time.
freshen our,
The first meeting in September is going to need to be canceled, but it'll be our September 21st meeting. I will add this item, and we will have a site plan on that. So we'll, just one single site plan, not four. We'll do a single site plan and then put that then, we can adjust it that after that site plan.
Can I have a suggestion? Can we make it so that we don't have that big of agenda so that we can devote the time for this that's going to be
Yes,
necessary?
the brewery, the New York Barber Shop, they had a timeline on when they had to get that site plan in compliance, and I did have the.
Well, those were important.
Yes, but I don't like to load up the meeting too. I remember today, I was thinking, what did I do? On the agenda.
Yeah,
There were some time issues on some of these applications, and we wanted to get them further. Thank you for your patience and time for doing them all on one agenda.
Is there any public input? Somebody who wants to tell us something we haven't heard? No? Okay. Any new business here? Staff matters?
With regards with tonight and the brewery, and as you can see, there are some Florida statutes, definitions, and guidelines. Do you feel that we need to possibly add, and there's another one coming in so that we don't look at it as a special use, but add a definition into our code book for breweries and possibly add that in under permitted uses into areas? If you would like to, if there are any possibly code, I don't know if we could do it at the same time with the riverfront development, but another land development code addition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how many of those are we going to get, you know?
I think that as times change, though, we need to stay current with,
Yeah.
so probably so.
As I understand, the breweries welcome additional breweries into the area. They don't look at them as competition because there are the crowd that like to do the walking between the breweries. And so
Yeah.
usually when you have one or two, more like to come in. I just think that maybe it'd be pertinent that we put a definition and add it specifically into the zoning districts that you feel that they should. Or we can just look at them as pub/breweries. But we did have a concern tonight from a resident who felt that maybe it was manufacturing, and that has been staff's conundrum too on how to look at the breweries.
I think it's a valid concern. It is not very well defined. Their permit in order to do it is based on the fact that primarily they're a brew pub, they're a service establishment. But there may be other proposals that might be primarily for brewing and have as more ancillary some other concerns. So it may be worth considering. It's hard to fit it into the current code.
I would say definitely, because one of the ideas that I had in the different little clusters we had on the riverfront talking about that was the possibility of something small like that. Not big, but something small, because that might be a magnet, if you will. So it's a good point to address, yes.
Is it a liquor license that's required?
Yes. I'm not, a lot of, this is all new too, but just from what Mr. Anderson has explained to me when he has come in, and there is different licenses for just brewing and serving on site. If you do get good, your beer is a good product, that for you to be able to can and deliver it or sell it to other bars, that's a different type of license. So ATF also does have licenses and guidelines for the beer.
And then we also have some concerns about serving alcoholic beverages within so many feet of churches and schools and things like that.
Yes, that could be regulated
Yeah.
if you put that in. So
I do think we need to be specific. or more specific anyway.
Yep, good point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners' matters? Obviously, commissioners don't matter.
I do have one question.
Yes.
I don't know if Dory can answer this. Is the 512 construction on schedule? It looks a little late to me, I don't know.
I believe it was going to November from what surface material I've seen and reviewed, so we still do have a few months. We have had some questions that if some of the turn lanes turning onto Roseland Road and Barber Street were going to get lengthened. They are not. At this time, it was strictly a resurfacing project, not a redesign. Because it was resurfacing, they were able to get the FDOT grant, but if they redesigned it, then the county had to pay for it, or using some county monies. But once the project is done, all of those turn lanes and the sod and the grass to reestablish those, because you can see where they are going onto the, will all be done through the finalization of the project. But it is strictly a resurfacing and subgrade project, not a redesign.
So do your,
But it's
your
November.
knowledge is that it's on schedule?
That I do not know. I just know that the timeline, they had it to November.
It's a real challenge with school having restarted and having the roads completely
I certainly can
demolished.
find out.
My concern is that there's a lot of times that I go up to 512 and there's nobody working except for people putting sod down. And I just wondered why, and is it behind schedule because of that? So.
The contractor that's doing it has other city, contracts with the city. We have numbers. I'll definitely call, and
Okay.
I can email something out tomorrow, let you know.
Thank you.
It looks like they have their base down and they're just waiting for inspections for the next list. It looks like they're getting ready to shift it to, or they already have. Dory, I have some concerns about our drainage swales again. They're really getting overgrown. We're getting a lot of water. My area in particular used to drain fine and it's clogging because the swale's really overgrown. Not only are they overgrown, the trees are overgrown onto the power lines, and we lost some power over the last few storms. And I'm sure it's happening in multiple areas in there. We have somebody contracted right now cleaning these drainage swales.
I'm not sure.
I think we do, because they cleaned mine about 2 weeks ago.
Way
Lucky me,
behind.
huh?
They're way behind.
I'm not sure if it's city crews because
always
they had
been an
had some
issue
new
for
equipment
me.
that we could do it, or if it was a subcontractor. I'm not.
Yeah, that's always been an issue for me, especially considering they don't want us to do anything with those drainage swales, but they're not maintaining it, so.
It is a subcontractor.
The properties that do maintain it would like sometimes to put a fence all the way to that property line, and they're not allowed. So if the city doesn't want anybody to put their fences on the property lines, they need to maintain their drainage swales. They're in real poor shape, and it's bad season right now for that. So I want it known,
I
or
will look into
mentioned
it.
to Mr. Watanabe still. Is he still our city engineer?
Not at this time.
Oh.
We no longer have a city attorney. We have consulting engineers now, and so same with our site plans. We have gone to a rotating consulting engineer process if at any time, but there's certainly our public works director I could ask to come to one of our meetings, or definitely get the information, Mr. Griffin himself.
Thank you.
And is there anything anybody wants specifically on the next agenda other than our unfinished business? Okay. We're adjourned.
Thank you, commissioners.